the greatest battle you'll ever fight isn't out there. It's in here. You see, your mind is not a quiet observer. It's a sculptor. Every word you hear, every thought you repeat, every image you allow in it carves you slowly, quietly, repeatedly. And here's the truth. You're already brainwashed. The question is, was it by design or by default? Most people never rise, not because they lack talent, not because they lack time, but because their thoughts were hijacked before they could even think for themselves. They were programmed by fear, by limitation, by the low expectations of those who quit before them. And they never paused to ask, whose voice is running my life? But here's the good news. You can rewrite it all. You can brainwash yourself on purpose, for discipline, for belief, for success. And today, I'm going to show you exactly how. Let me tell you something most people never stop to consider. Every day, your mind is being fed. Ideas, beliefs, stories, emotions, they're being poured into you drip by drip, word by word. And here's the catch. You don't even have to agree with them for them to stick. You just have to hear them enough. That's how the human mind works. It learns not by truth, but by repetition. So the question isn't if you're being programmed, it's who is doing the programming. When I was 25, I was broke, physically, mentally, and financially. Not because I didn't have potential, but because I'd been taught to think small, act slow, and wait my turn. I'd inherited the philosophies of people who had settled. I didn't know it at the time, but I was living by their beliefs. That's how dangerous, unexamined programming can be. You end up building someone else's life, not your own. It wasn't until I met a mentor who challenged my thinking that I realized what was happening. He said to me, Jim, if you don't take control of your own mind, someone else will, and I guarantee they won't be aiming for your success. That hit me like a brick. From that day on, I started treating my mind like fertile soil. I stopped letting weeds grow. I became intentional about every idea I allowed in. Books replaced the television. Goal setting replaced wishful thinking. Discipline replaced drift. You've got to take command of your mental diet. Because every word you hear, every person you spend time with, every show you watch, it's either programming you for success or programming you for mediocrity. The mind is a garden. The question is, are you planting flowers or are you letting weeds take over? You don't get rich with a poor mindset. You don't build anything lasting when you're echoing voices of limitation. As Socrates said, the unexamined life is not worth living. And I'll add, the unexamined mind will never lead you to wealth, asterisk. If you're not the one doing the programming, you're the one being programmed. When the sun rises, so does your mind. And those first few moments when you open your eyes, they're not just casual minutes. They are prime time for programming. The mind is like a sponge in the morning, soft, open, and absorbent. What you feed it then doesn't just stay for the hour, it echoes all day long. So here's the truth. Your first thought isn't a throwaway, it's a direction. And the question is, what direction are you setting? Asterisk. I remember years ago when I was still trying to get my life together, I used to wake up and the first thing I'd do was reach for the news. And guess what I got? Conflict, fear, problems, negativity. Then I'd wonder why my mood was off, my energy low, and my ambition stuck in neutral by 10 a.m. I was losing the day before it even started, all because I gave my first thoughts away to chaos. Eventually I learned, success doesn't begin with action, it begins with thought. It begins with structure. So I changed the routine. I started waking up and reaching for my goals, not my phone. I would sit in stillness, take a breath, and say, this day is mine. I am focused. I am disciplined. I move with purpose. Not once in a while, every single morning. Asterisk. And it changed the way I walked into the world. You've got to build a fortress around those first few minutes. You don't wait for motivation to show up. You install it. Asterisk. You don't ask how you feel. You tell yourself how you move. That's leadership. That's programming. Marcus Aurelius, one of the wisest emperors who ever lived, wrote in his journal, the soul becomes dyed with the color of its thoughts. So why start the day in gray when you could paint it with gold? Success is not built by accident. It's built with discipline. And the first discipline of the day is choosing your first thought with intention. Because if you lose your mind before breakfast, don't be surprised when the rest of the day slips through your hands. You see, the mind is like a garden, and your thoughts are the seeds you plant. But here's the part many people overlook. They don't just plant seeds once and expect a harvest. No, they either tend the garden or let it grow wild with weeds. Your mental environment, the ideas, the conversations, the influences you expose yourself to shapes the soil where your future will grow. And if you're not careful, that soil gets poisoned. I remember when I was building my business and my life, I realized very quickly that who I spent time with wasn't just about friendship, it was about survival. I surrounded myself with people who lifted me higher, who held me to standards I hadn't dared to reach on my own. I had to cut ties with those who anchored me in excuses, fear, or complacency. Because the truth is, your environment either nourishes your dreams or starves them. It's not just about people. It's what you listen to, what you watch, the books you read, and even what you say to yourself in idle moments. That quiet time is never neutral. It's a battlefield. The mind craves input, and if you don't provide it consciously, it fills the silence with old stories. The stories of doubt, limitation, and failure. That's why you must guard your mental environment like it's the foundation of your house. Without a strong foundation, nothing you build will stand. You must become the gatekeeper of your mind, choosing what enters and what stays out. Because the condition of your internal world determines the course of your external life. If you want to change your destiny, start by changing what you feed your mind every single day. I want you to think for a moment about who you are. Not the label others give you, not the circumstances you were born into, but the person you believe yourself to be deep inside. That identity, your sense of self, is not something handed down like an heirloom. It's not something you inherit by default. No, it's something you build brick by brick, thought by thought, action by action. When I was younger, I often heard people say, I'm just not the kind of person who can do that. And I realized that they were speaking themselves into limitation. You see, identity is like a contract you write with yourself, a mental agreement about what you can and cannot do. And here's the critical part. You don't become the person you want by hoping or wishing. You become that person by repeating the actions, the words, and the habits that align with that identity. In my own life, I wasn't born with $1 million mindset. I wasn't handed a blueprint for success. What I did was simple, yet powerful. I told myself every day that I was becoming disciplined, not just with words, but with deeds. I showed up consistently, did the work, faced the challenges. Slowly but surely, my nervous system caught up to the story I was telling myself. The habits I built rewired my identity. And over time, I stopped trying to be someone else and simply became who I decided to be. Aristotle said it best: we are what we repeatedly do. Excellence, then, is not an act, but a habit. That means your identity isn't fixed. It's fluid, constantly shaped by the choices you make every day. If you keep telling yourself you're someone who gives up, your brain will believe it. But if you repeat that you're someone who perseveres, your brain will align and your life will follow. Remember, you don't wait for confidence to come knocking. You build it through repetition. Your future self is forged in the quiet moments when you choose action over comfort, consistency over chaos, and belief over doubt. That's how identity is built. And that's how you brainwash yourself for success. Every day you speak thousands of words, some out loud, many more silently to yourself. But here's a truth that few fully grasp. Your words are not just sounds or scribbles on a page. They are commands to your mind and soul. They shape your reality before it even unfolds. What you say, how you say it, and most importantly, what you say to yourself in private sets the blueprint for your life. I learned this lesson the hard way. Early in my career, I noticed how often I would speak in excuses or doubt without even realizing it. I'd say things like, "I'm just not lucky," or "This is too hard for me." And every time, my results confirmed those words. It was as if my words were contracts, signed and sealed by my subconscious, guiding my actions and limiting my potential. Changing your language is the first step to changing your life. I began to treat my words like seeds, planting them carefully. Instead of saying, "I'm trying," I said, "I am disciplined." Instead of, "I hope," I said, "I decide." Not because I was fooling myself, but because I was steering my mind toward a new reality. I spoke as if the success I sought was already mine. And over time, my behavior, thoughts, and results began to follow. There's a simple but profound truth I want you to understand today. You will never outperform your self-image. No matter how much knowledge you gain, how many skills you develop, or how hard you work, your results in life will always be limited by the way you see yourself. The self-image is the foundation upon which all success is built. If that foundation is shaky, the entire structure will falter. When I first started on my journey, I knew the value of ambition and education, but I often found myself held back not by a lack of effort, but by a limited view of what I believed was possible for me. I had to raise my self-image before I could raise my income or influence. It wasn't about pretending to be someone else. It was about expanding my view of who I could become. This meant changing my language, changing my habits, and most importantly, changing the stories I told myself. There is a saying from the great philosopher William James: "The greatest discovery of my generation is that a human being can alter his life by altering his attitudes." And that's exactly what the self-image is. A collection of attitudes, beliefs, and assumptions about yourself that dictate how you show up every day. If you see yourself as a winner, your mind, body, and actions aligned to produce winning results. If you see yourself as a victim or a failure, no amount of motivation will last long. Think of it this way. Your mind is a faithful servant to your self-image. It works day and night to make your beliefs real. If your self-image is small, your achievements will be small. If your self-image is large and strong, your achievements will rise to meet it. This is why personal development is not about learning new skills alone. It's about transforming the way you see yourself, rewiring your self-image until it becomes the driving force behind your success. You cannot rise above the picture you hold of yourself. So, build that picture wisely, nurture it daily, and watch how your life begins to reflect it in every way. As we come to the close of our time together, remember this. Success is not a distant destination reserved for a select few. It is a journey crafted moment by moment, thought by thought, choice by choice. The mind is the soil where the seeds of success either take root or wither away. You are always being programmed, whether you realize it or not. The question is, who holds the pen writing your story? If you desire to change your life, it starts with taking deliberate control of your thoughts, your words, and your habits. It means owning your mornings, guarding your mental environment fiercely, repeating the identity you want until it becomes your nature, speaking with intention, and anchoring yourself daily to the vision you refuse to let go of. I challenge you today to become the architect of your own mind. Refuse to be a passive recipient of old stories and limiting beliefs. Instead, commit to the daily discipline of brainwashing yourself, not with empty slogans, but with powerful, consistent, intentional actions that reshape your identity and your future. So rise up, begin each day with purpose. Speak your future into existence. Guard your mind like the precious resource it is, and anchor yourself in your vision relentlessly. Your success depends on it, and it's waiting for you to claim it.